This is Jocko Podcast number 94 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
The black cloud of smoke exploded silently outside the open door of the Dakota, obscuring for the moment my view of the geometrical Dutch landscape, deserted but for a few forlorn cows. As soon as the sea had appeared below us, I started to think about the flak, and I knew that everyone else in the aircraft must be worrying as well. When we crossed the East Anglican coastline, that slight wave of movement had flickered down the aircraft as the men checked their watches, calculating the time it would take to fly over the sea and come within range of the now alerted German anti-aircraft guns. Below us, the air-sea rescue launches of the RAF dotting the water at precise intervals were pleasantly comforting. The narrow band of beach, which was the coast of Holland, had aroused us once again. As the flooded fields flashed into view, Private Harrison had leaned across to point out the guns on the ground shooting up at the massed ranks of our aircraft. At the sound of my Batman's voice, which had been silent for the past hour, the men near to the open doorway had craned forward to see what they could, while the rest, anxious for the first indications of the enemy, had twisted their necks to peer through the small windows at their backs. At first I could see nothing, and I was stupidly aggravated that everyone but myself could spot gun flashes. Then came that cloud of smoke, producing an odd sense of satisfaction, a reaction which immediately shamed me. This was the behavior of a small boy. For all that, it was satisfying not to feel scared by it. Perhaps it was because the experience was not only novel, but in some way impersonal. Looking down the dark tunnel of the aircraft at the double line of soldiers, it was a relief to see that all traces of nervousness had disappeared. We had been waiting a long time for this. So that is the opening of a book called Men at Arnhem. And it was actually sent to me by a guy by the name of James Fenelon, and the book was originally published under the pseudonym Tom Angus, and it was about this battle at this place called Arnhem, which is in Holland. And in the book, the units that are doing the fighting, they're not identified. They don't say what units they are, but shortly after the book was published, it became very clear and it was revealed that the author was an individual named Geoffrey Powell, a British Army officer, and that the unit that the book talks about was the 156th Parachute Battalion of the British Army, who fought against all odds and really with misfortune after misfortune for 8 days during Operation MarketGarden, which is a famous World War II operation, a bold and super aggressive plan, and also the largest airborne operation up until that point. And the goal was to isolate parts of the German forces and to cut off what's known as the Ruhr district, which is like the heart of German industry, and then open up a route going from through that whole area, take control of the roads and the bridges, and be able to punch right into the heart of Germany. Over 40,000 airborne troops took part in the operation, including America's 82nd Airborne and the 101st Airborne Divisions. But the deepest, those that jumped deepest into enemy territory were from the British 1st Airborne Division, and that included this battalion, the 156th Parachute Battalion. And if you know anything about Operation MarketGarden, although it did achieve some beneficial things, overall the mission was considered a failure because it didn't actually achieve the objectives that it wanted to achieve. And as you can imagine, those that were furthest out suffered some absolutely catastrophic casualties and people taken prisoner and people killed in action. And this is only an 8-day. This is 8 days long. So this period that we're about to cover is only 8 days long, and you're going to see that it is vicious. And the names were changed in this book, but again, this is an account from one of the company commanders inside this battalion.